Great, so here we are with part two of project three, and we'll start by looking at the spec document right here. So hopefully you've downloaded them. Remember, everything is being posted inside of the announcements section that I posted, I believe, on Monday. Okay, so online learning week of, and we have all these videos here. If we continue to move down, again, study for the theory of the term test, which is going to be happening in the week of April 6th. And then nicely organized right here. I actually updated it a little bit so it's a little easier to read. Project 3 video series, all right, overview. You've done part 1, hopefully. Spec document there, spec document here for part 2, and then part 3. And here is the practice site for you to download if you want to practice doing the grid video series that I'm about to do right here. It shouldn't be too lengthy, but it should give you enough review and backing about the grid to be able to complete your own redevelopment of your Port Hope site to make it responsive using media queries and the CSS Grid. All right, so again, make sure you have that access to the spec doc and download these files right here. Okay, so while you're doing that, excuse me, I'll take a look at the spec doc myself, and I'm going to open it up. So using the CSS Grid consists of converting your Adobe XD design into a responsive web page using media queries and the grid. You'll again have 3 devices to style and position, one for mobile, one for tablet, desktop. And again, part 2 is only about the home page in 3 different viewports. So second page of that. Lot to read here. I'm not going to read word for word everything, but I will start up here saying, remember, project 2 and 3 are not too different from one another. They each have a header, featured section, main body, and a footer. And they also use media queries. The main difference here is you're using CSS Grid to structure your website for the 3 different viewports. Okay, and now again, you need a site container. Here I mentioned that it could be a div with a class equals site in it, or you could add that to the body tag. You'll see exactly what I'm going to do once I get to that step. So even though you don't understand everything coming out of my mouth right now, once you look at the next videos for each of these sections, hopefully it'll become clear. All right, header, featured section. Here you can use a main or an aside tag, again, for the main section of your website, and then a footer. And here is the typical rubric. So the grid structuring of your page is worth 4% of your term. Content, style, and positioning of everything inside of your main grid areas. So this is all about header, main, aside, footer, featured image, and how it's structured on the page. This is all about the interior designer aspect of it, the content you place inside of those areas and how you style and position them. And then again, when it's due, the value of everything. So we're at 10% right now for the homepage development. The design was worth 7.5 and the internals are worth 7.5%. So a little bit of an overview here, and looking at the root folder, which is my sample. It's not the best sample, it's not the worst, like I mentioned, but if I were to look at it, remember it's right here. Now, this is where I want you to kind of stop and pause for a sec. Usually I rebuild a sample site that is relative directly to your project, but I'm not going to rebuild this one during this sample site series because a lot of people tend to simply kind of use the sample site to populate their own content, and I get a lot of websites that look just like my sample site with a little bit of tweaks. So I might still do something like that for the Parallax Project 4 coming up, but for now, this is a sample that I'm using online only here to show you. Okay, and if I were to kind of do this, remember it changes. All right, and then it goes to mobile here. And if I were to, again, in Firefox, take a look at the right click and go inspect, you can see that indeed it is the grid. So here's the main container. All right, names, line numbers, area names are there. And then all the nested grid for the header to section off the different parts of the header, logo, this area, and this guy here. And then the main body, which is right here, has its own grid as well. Check that off. And now you can see there's a name here in the different grid lines in numbers 2, 3, 4, just for the main section of the site. Okay, so well done there for this individual last year. And we're just focusing on the home page. But what I'm going to be rebuilding, because I don't want everyone just using this template, is this old site from last term. Now, please, please, please don't make your Port Hope Fall Fairs look like this old website. We're not redesigning The fact that I'm doing this layout has nothing to do with Port Hope Fall Fair. The only thing that this has to do with the project 3 that we're currently talking about is I'm going to use the grid to redo it. All right, and based on what you're reviewing here, I did this in class for the Tuesday and the Thursday block. I missed it for the Monday because they had a family day. All right, but again, I'm passing on skills of the CSS grid that you can then implement into your own Port Hope layout to then make sense of it, because I'm hoping that you're going to create something that doesn't look, just like this. All right, and certainly shouldn't look like this. So it's not about you taking the layout that I have, it's you taking the knowledge of the grid and making your layout work for you and then submitting it. Again, it is more difficult. It's not a lack of instruction that is more difficult. It's because we're getting more advanced into the semester, and now the expectations are greater for you to try to work things through yourself more independently using problem solving and critical thinking. All right, so again, this is just a project that a student completed for Web Design 1. It was not responsive, as you can tell. All right, nothing happens when you actually do this. All right, and this is all part of that download that I asked you to go right here, practice site download files here. So hopefully you've done that. And looking at what that is, you'll see that inside you have a static site, and that's the original. So that's literally this guy right here. All right, it's just for reference. Just basically like, yeah, this is where you were at last term. Never have to touch this guy. All right, and then you have the practice session, which is what we're going to complete during the sample series for part 2, and it looks like this. So here is the practice session. It's not done. All the content's in there because we're not going to review HTML, CSS that I taught you in Web Design 1 by just populating and styling this guy. All right, so things aren't completed. That's what we're going to pick up here and complete it. And then this is a sample of the finished version, which is going to be basically everything we're going to implement into here to get to this point is what the video series is about. And when it is finished, this is the completed version right here. So finished version, and you'll be able to tell that I can now go and it will flip. All right, there it is. And then if I continue to drag, all right, right over there, okay, you can see that it's responsive now too. Okay, now if I go and inspect it, you'll see that also there's a body with the grid, and then in the main header section, there's a nested one also for header right over here in nav. All right, logo and nav rather, right there inside the header. So I have a nested grid as well, and you'll require to do that on your own. So let's get started. This is the sample site, and the whole goal is to pass on more CSS grid knowledge, not to give you a sample site base to work from. All right, so thanks guys, on to the next video.